Good morning, kids. Today we're checking out a brand new video from Popcross Studios of turning more Poppy Playtime monsters into superheroes. Let's hop in and check it out.
More creatures out of Poppy Playtime into superheroes. I did this a few weeks ago, and it was really nice to see that got a pretty great response, even though it was me going back to making original superheroes, or quote-unquote original, meaning I wasn't setting these superheroes in the worlds of Marvel or DC or something like that. Which I like making those videos as well, but it is a lot of fun making new superheroes into my own universes. I got a bunch of requests to do more smiling critters, so I've got more of those in here today, and some characters that I kinda just wanted to work with. So let's get into it, shall we?
Let's go.
Hit like
if you want. Subscribe if you feel like it. By the way, enjoy the show.
Many details about the
Of course, we're starting off with the main doll herself, Poppy.
superpowered beings created by the company PowerPlay Co. are still uncertain. In their Better Bodies experiments, they gave many young children superpowers, then raised them to act as heroes that promoted the company's toy sales, but also implanted chips in their minds, which would allow the company to take control of their heroes if need be, and many of them would eventually come to question the morality of this action. The company was essentially destroyed, and the majority of their staff killed off by many of their own creations during an event in which their vengeful prototype hero experiment, hereafter referred to as Proto, took control of the minds of many of their in-house superheroes, forcing them to go on a rampage. Some of the heroes made by PowerPlay had been killed off in this event. Some joined Proto, thinking his actions to have been justified. Some went into hiding, still working as vigilantes on the side, and some were attempting to expose Proto's actions to the world to ensure he was brought to justice. This was the case for the hero called Poppy, or Poppy PowerPlay. As you may guess from that name, she was essentially bolstered as the face of the company's heroes at a time, though oddly enough her abilities always seemed somewhat limited compared to her allies. Still, this did not mean she wasn't a formidable hero. She had incredible agility, elevated speed, and light super strength that all stacked very well on top of her dedicated training under the tutelage of Misty Delilah, PowerPlay's resident combat specialist. Audio logs found at PowerPlay by the Superhero Corrections and Placement Foundation after the severe incident stated that Poppy had been used as the poster child for their work because she was an attractive, bright face whose mask covered little of her appearance, and she was very personable. What is odd, though, is that in spite of her barely covering her face, it hasn't yet been confirmed who she actually was behind the mask. It's now assumed that her appearance may have been altered during the experiments that gave her her abilities in order to keep her identity a secret. This was not purely for her protection, but also because PowerPlay wanted to add an element of mystery to their heroes, to build more public intrigue and garner more attention for their business. The prominent theory at one point, that has seemed less likely in retrospect, was that Poppy was a PowerPlay employee named Stella Graber, who was reported to have been questioning the company's actions, despite once having been heavily involved in the Better Bodies program. It is still technically possible that this is true, but one of the many corpses found on site after the hour of Proto's ploy heavily resembles Stella, and it's suspected to be her. Proto even utilized the likeness of Stella in a set of altered memories he implanted in the minds of some of the PowerPlay heroes to encourage them to help hunt down Poppy and anyone that was expressing interest in outing his—
Hey, I gotta ask, is that bow tie on her like metal? Like, can she take it off and almost use like a battle ring, throw it?
His actions on that blood-drenched day to the world. Currently, Poppy is on the run with one of the other original heroes from the company, Miss Kiss, who can't blend in as well with society as Poppy can. Their intention is to garner all the help they can to bring Proto to justice. But others, like some of the surviving members of the team called the Smiling Crew, are simply trying to stay out of his way.
Well, alright, starting off well with Poppy herself, not a bad start. Now then, who's next?
One of the later hero projects made—
Really? Crafticorn, huh? Well, alright.
By the company after the creation of heroes such as Poppy, Miss Kiss, and Mr. Hugs was a team of 8 superheroes called the Smiling Crew. They had distinct features but all donned masks that made them appear like they had widespread smiles. They could each also expel a gas from their mouths that caused various effects in those who inhaled them. Well, one of these
Different
heroes,
effects, of course.
Catnap, who'd actively helped Proto on
There
the
he
day of
is.
his ploy,
That was
would
the guy.
eventually be forbidden by the company to use the mist he could expel. The others had continued to use theirs throughout their hero careers. Craftycorn's was one that she would not use on villains, but on her own team. She could expel a jasmine-scented mist that would relax any anxiety in her allies, helping their minds to stay more sharp and focused on solving problems to whatever issues came up in the field.
That's useful.
On top of this, and the standard elevated speed and strength, Crafty was given the ability to emit sticky colored paint from her hands. She could use these to stick enemies to walls or floors to hold them in place until they could be properly apprehended by authorities. She'd also often leave a painted version of her signature colorful flower emblem at a crime scene as a sign of her work in helping to apprehend those responsible. Her costume is adorned with a horn on her head that was originally quite sharp, but an incident occurred in which she accidentally impaled and killed a robber during one of the team's missions, and the horn was then replaced with one that was much more dulled. The company covered up this incident.
Just make it like something squishy, where even if she pokes, it just goes.
Not wanting Craftycorn's kind and innocent demeanor tarnished, and audio logs found later state that Craftycorn was then put through multiple therapy sessions to try and help her get over this incident. She'd always focused much more on simply disarming and restraining villains, never making an effort to harm, let alone kill them. So, as you may imagine, when she was eventually mind-controlled to help kill dozens of Power Play employees, her mental state was left in tatters. Luckily, she had a friend to help her through it. In the aftermath of Proto's ploy, Craftycorn went on the run with another member of the Smiling Crew, Bobby Bearhug, who she'd been quite close with before. They were continuing to work as heroes, staying somewhat under the radar in the city of Craftopolis. This city has a wide array of heroes and villains, so they believed it would be easy to stay hidden. But Proto still managed to track them, and send one of his minions to try and bring them in. Proto still had access to a computer from PowerPlay that could activate the mind control abilities the company once used on all the heroes, but at least at first he was using this sparingly, likely trying to not lose what little trust many of the heroes might have in him. These two were not actively trying to out Proto's actions, but it seemed he, in the very least, wanted to speak with them anyway, perhaps to convince them to join his cause and stop the others who were trying to expose him to the world. And the hunter he sent had been a bit of an outcast, but also was the most physically powerful of the Power Play heroes.
Ooh. Who could... Oh, wait, it's going to be Braun, the Brontosaurus. He literally showed us. Why was I trying to guess? Braun, appeal.
The hero that Proto sent after Craftycorn and Bobby Bearhug had been quite an odd man out among the heroes of Power Play. Most of the heroes the company had made had been orphans, raised in a foster home that was eventually brought on site to Power Play, but Burly Braun had actually been an older employee named Thomas Clark. At 59 years old, he was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, and so asked if he could become one of the Better Bodies experiments, both to give him abilities, but also to see if this process could heal him and save his life. The company was hesitant, as they wanted all their heroes to be teenagers and young adults to increase the public appeal of them, but decided it could...
Oh, come on, even these guys would have had to learn at some point that you always need some older heroes, though, to be like grandfathered in, and to be like a mentor or something like that. I mean, hell, we got a lot of those heroes still going on in like DC and Marvel. I can't remember any of them, but you know who I'm talking about.
It'd be good to have an older male hero to appeal to older demographics, and likely use him as a way to encourage grandparents to purchase more of their company's toys for their grandkids.
Okay,
they wound up agreeing and put him through their tests. The results would be successful, both in terms of giving him the highest grade durability they'd achieved yet, super strength that was unmatched, and, most importantly to Thomas, cured his cancer. He did not gain speed like many of the other heroes, but overall his trial was considered a great success. Though his exposure as a hero would end up being very limited. When he was brought into training with the other heroes, they did not take to their new ally as they had to each other. Most of the heroes were far younger than he, and had grown up in close proximity to one another, so his age and unfamiliarity with them made him a bit of an outcast.
Yeah,
the public reception to him would also not be as warm as Power Play had hoped. They gave him the hero name Burly Braun, but for most public appearances, people were rarely as interested in having him appear as they were the younger members of the group. He could be pretty awkward in interviews and would tell jokes that nobody else really thought were funny. Clark was not
sounds
too
like my
disheartened
dad.
by this at first. Sure, he had enjoyed the idea of being a superhero, but mostly he was just grateful to be cured of his ailment. He ended up spending much of his time as a heavy lifter in the actual power play site, doing jobs that anyone without his strength would require a machine or forklift to pull off. He was a very hard worker and would do whatever he was instructed to. But over time, the distance he felt between himself and the other heroes would start to weigh on him. He'd try to spend some time with them and tell them more of his jokes, but they never really landed. He also eventually started to grow resentful towards power play as they stopped sending him out altogether, and he overheard them saying that he was a liability to their branding because of his age, and he thought he looked very young for his age, especially with his physical enhancements. Still, he came in and did his work diligently and never complained. But when Proto's ploy was initiated and resulted in the deaths of most power play employees, he had no idea how to react. He was found by Proto and those aligned with him, and was given a surprisingly warm invitation to join them. It was unexpected, and he was uncertain of the morality of this leader, but still, he agreed. He then became a part of Proto's team and eventually did as instructed to go and track down some of the Smiling Crew and bring them in. But this very mission would force him to question again whether aligning himself with Proto was right or not.
Oh, but it was probably not at all. I mean, I can understand feeling resentment and all, but you know what? Let's just see how this all plays out. Why don't we? Next. Oop, hold on, Edwin. We'll be right back. And we'll heal with a bear hug.
The Bear Hug had wondered what had happened to Burly Brawn in the aftermath of Proto's ploy. She had always felt bad for him. She was very warm and friendly to everyone, and would often be the one to end fights between the Smiling Crew members, and help everyone come to some kind of understanding. She had been friendly to Thomas on a few occasions, but always kept her distance as her team didn't associate much with him, and they were Bobby's main priority. She had wanted to try and talk to him more, but as time went on, he was brought less and less to hero training, and she would eventually rarely see him around power play. The first time she remembered seeing him in months was when he came and found her and Craftycorn in Craftopolis. And of course now it didn't seem like the time to try and make friends, given who he was working for. He started by asking them to come with him, that Proto needed to see the Smiling Crew members who were still alive. He said that Proto had plans for them all, beyond ensuring that his murderous ploy didn't become public knowledge. He said it would be what was best for all of them. When Crafty and Bobby said they weren't willing to come, Burly Brawn said that, in that case, he'd been instructed to bring them in by force. Crafty splashed her sticky paints at him, but Brawn was far too strong for that to stop him. Just slowed him down a bit. Bobby's mist ability made anyone who breathed it temporarily fall in love with her, so that didn't seem particularly helpful in this situation. If Burly Brawn was doing something he thought was genuinely for their best, then falling in love with her wouldn't really stop him. She was also more physically powerful than any of the other Smiling Crew members, though. This made her consider that with Crafty slowing his movements with her paints, maybe Bobby could take him in a fight. She decided to go for it and took her
I'm gonna call it now. It doesn't walk, does it?
first swing at Brawn. It hit hard against his right cheek and did manage to make him stumble back. That gave her the confidence to keep laying into him. He got a few hits in on her, and they were harder blows than Bobby had ever taken. But thankfully, they were few and far between, as her speed was far beyond his, especially with Crafty sticking his feet down. The battle was starting to look good for Bobby, but the more she hit him, the worse she felt. It sunk in more during that battle that Brawn really may think he was trying to do what was best for them, and Proto bringing him onto a team may have been the first time any of the power play heroes had been truly accepting and warm towards him. So before the battle was over, Bobby stopped and told Crafty to lay off too. Brawn looked confused but still went for another swing. Bobby ducked around it but moved into his momentum and gave Burly Brawn a hug. He just froze, unsure of what to do. After a moment, she pulled back and said that she was sorry she and the others had never been more welcoming to him, that it must have been hard being so separated from the rest of the Better Bodies experimentees. She said that she should have made more of an effort. But also that, even still, she and Crafty couldn't go with him now. That Proto was a bad person who had taken things too far, and whatever he had planned, they wanted no part in it. To her shock, Thomas then broke down crying. He said he knew that what Proto had done was wrong, but it had felt so nice to finally be accepted and to feel wanted by one of the Power Play heroes. He thought he could look past the bad if they kept being kind to him, even though he knew their actions were wrong. Bobby offered to have Braun stay there with her and Crafty to help them do more under-the-radar hero work in Craftopolis, but he said if he didn't go back, Proto would just send someone else. He decided to return to Proto and say that Bobby and Crafty had gotten away, and he wasn't sure where they'd gone. He'd then secretly send info to the remaining Smiling crew about what Proto was up to, so they could stay more easily off his radar. Even if there was still much up in the air about Proto's future plans, and what would come of Braun and the others, Bobby was glad she'd finally gotten the chance to apologize and try and make things right. And just maybe that had helped ensure that whatever Proto was planning would never actually come to pass.
Now that is what I was looking for. That is perfect. Oh yeah, 2 thumbs up. That's what I give it. And for the outro.
If you enjoyed this, I highly recommend going back to the previous episode in this series if you haven't seen it yet, Poppy Playtime Characters as Superheroes, or you might like any of my other superhero episodes. I've got a whole bunch of them, turning Pokemon into superheroes, Minecraft mobs into superheroes, Skylander characters into superheroes, and there's definitely going to be more to come. Also, as always, for free for everybody, all the inks and high-resolution art from this video are going to go up on the Popcraft Studios Patreon, which you no longer need to pay for to get stuff off there, but there is a $1 a month tier for anyone that just wants to help support the channel, and I hugely appreciate everybody on there. Well, besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote I read today from a woman named Dr. Leah Katz. And you know what, I'm straight up just going to read this one because it's a little bit longer.
Yeah, please.
But she said, pay attention to your feelings of resentment. Feeling resentful is often a clue that there's a boundary you need to set, or there's one that you need to enforce. If you feel resentful, ask yourself, is there a conversation I need to have, or something that I need to accept?
No,
I think that's a really good one, and I hope it's inspiring to someone out there. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Friday. Godzilla Dragons Part 4.
Nice. Well, everyone, that's going to be the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the videos will be in the description below, and I'll see all you kids next time when we flick on. Peace out.